Okay, guys, I'm doing another video. I live in the Central Texas area, and one of the newspapers in the area had an editorial that I felt obliged to comment on. It's a beautifully done rhetorical garbage. And so this article here is by a family practitioner in the College Station area. The editorial is called Marijuana, Not as Benign as Some Folks Claim. Okay, got it? So let's go ahead and take a look at this article, okay? First thing it starts off. First paragraph. We're not even going far here. Attendees at the, in quotation marks, medical marijuana seminar at Bryan's First United Methodist Church last Sunday were treated to a scientific sounding. Notice that. We've already framed it. Scientific sounding, thus implying not scientific. This is a great guy, this Mr. Dr. Matt Poling, very enlightened gentleman. He says, good for what ails you, also in quotation marks, again, ridiculing it. Those people, those crazy people in their medicine and their recreational use, they're just nuts. Sales pitch that might have made a 19th century snake oil salesman blush. Do you think there's any bias here? Do you think you're going to get an unbiased opinion from this family doctor? This family medicine doctor? The mashup of pseudoscience lecture with a decriminalization political rally left most in attendance both amazed and inspired to march against the forces of, quote, fear, greed, racism, and ignorance, end quote. That were preventing them from freely experiencing their biological right to, and in quotations, cannabis. And he says here, formerly known as marijuana, among other aliases. Okay, wait a minute. Has this guy done any research? All right, let's take a look here. All right. Now, if we look, because I actually do research on things, so I know kind of what I'm talking about, so I don't sound like a moron like this guy. So if we were to look in the Encyclopedia of Psychoactive Plants, we would discover something interesting about this plant called cannabis. He says it's an alias. No, that's the original name of the plant. It's called Cannabis sativa or Cannabis indica or Cannabis rudellis, which we don't really have around here in the States. Okay, it was named by a gentleman, maybe he's heard of him, a guy named Linnaeus. He named it, let me see here, what year was cannabis first named cannabis? I bet you we can find out. Let's see here. Okay, I found information going back to 1849 on the name. Let's see here, Linnaeus. Let's see, guys. One moment. See how long this takes? Yeah, it says here, contemporary botanists are of two minds regarding the genus Cannabis. One school regards the genus as monotypic and suggests that there is only one species, Cannabis sativa, which can be divided into several varieties and numerous sorts. So this is the Latin name of the plant, okay? So I don't think it's an alias. And if we know the history of the word marijuana, we know that it dates back to the early 20th century of the United States and was a way to detract away from the idea that the plant they were actually talking about was the plant commonly called hemp. So this guy and his alias crap just proves that he's completely ignorant. Not to mention the fact that if you look in any book about cannabis, maybe he could look at Orgies of the Hemp Eaters. Ooh, just a little bit of information about cannabis. He would learn some amazing things. There are hundreds of names for cannabis, okay? Hundreds, probably thousands, which shows its importance to cultures around the world, okay? Let's continue. The handful of physicians in the back of the room were more skeptical, perhaps because we'd heard all this somewhere before. Now check this connection out. I want you to listen. Those of us who trained in the 1990s recall compelling arguments from patient advocates and progressive leaders in our field that it was perfectly safe, not addictive, and that suffering patients had a right to this treatment without interference from the government or ignorant old-school physicians. Only then the topic was opioids. So again, this guy somehow believed that an opioid, which is basically another word for opiates, like opium, morphine, and heroin, is not addictive. If these people bought into that crap, then they obviously had absolutely no knowledge of substances, which is interesting because they put themselves in the position of administrating substances pretty much as the main thing they do in their field now. So let's continue. Only then the topic was opioids. It took nearly 2 decades before we realized just how wrong they were. They never heard of heroin addiction or morphine addiction or opiate addiction, like opium dens, Civil War soldiers coming back addicted to morphine, people being able to buy heroin at the store and morphine at the store at the early 20th century. He never heard of any of this. Okay, so these doctors just started prescribing opiates left and right because they were so freaking ignorant of a substance that they thought it was perfectly fine to give out opiates. What? He's making a comparison with opiates and marijuana? Let's continue. True, at very high doses, opiates fatally can inhibit the respiratory drive, which marijuana does not. But instant death is hardly the only side effect we should be concerned with. Instant death? So that's a side effect of the opiates, right? Not marijuana. Okay. But supposedly there's other side effects that we should be aware of that are more important than sudden death. Oh, he's going to talk about the social morality fabric that's affected by the legalization of marijuana, the devil's drug. Or as my poster says, marijuana, el tabaco negro del diablo. And I'll put a picture of that up at the end of the video. And let's continue. The speaker highlighted bronchitis as the most significant side effect of marijuana use, but failed to mention the serious potential psychiatric risks. Perhaps this was better described in her book, which was available for sale, or perhaps she wasn't as concerned as the researchers of the National Institutes of Health about the links to chronic anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia. Available, and here's an unbiased, very knowledgeable source, okay? www.drugabuse.gov. Do you think that drugabuse.gov will reinforce the negative stereotypes about marijuana usage that this guy is actually promoting here? I wonder. So do you think that information is as reliable as the information you're going to find in a book like this? Okay? This is a book about the history of cannabis cultivation, basically throughout the world. The use of the seeds by various cultures as a food source, the use of hemp as a fabric and paper and petroleum product replacer, like what Henry Ford did with his cars. Of course, maybe he could read The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and then he'd be a little more enlightened, this guy, this supposed medical doctor. Or, maybe he would read, something like The Handbook of Abusable Drugs. Maybe he'd learn about that. This is even written by a fellow PhD guy, okay? So, or he could read Plantas de los Dioses, but he doesn't probably read Spanish. But on his website it says he speaks English and Spanish. Medical, of course. Marijuana advocates routinely minimize the addictive potential of the drug, but she went further, assuring her audience that it is not addictive, apparently at all. But that is small comfort to the families of the 4 million marijuana addicts in America today, according to National Institute of Health estimates. 4 million pot-smoking addicted bastards running around out there in the streets, breaking into cars to go score a bag of weed. Does this sound at all based in reality? Let's continue. It also estimates that 20% of regular pot smokers meet criteria for addiction, far higher than for regular alcohol users. Okay. Let's just continue. Sheriff Chris Kirk's concern that a blanket medical marijuana law would be the proverbial camel's nose under the tent is spot on. Oh, right. Except it isn't a camel. It's a Trojan horse designed by and wheeled to the gates of each of our 50 states, not by the medical community, but by the decriminalizers. And that's where the big problem is. This guy's total status quo. He doesn't want any competition in giving out drugs to people. He doesn't want people to explore things that have existed long before there was such thing as a medical doctor. The history of cannabis goes back easily with humanity 10,000 years. The oldest religion in the world, Hinduism, organized religion, considers cannabis to be a gift from the gods. Not to mention innumerable uses in cultures throughout the world, and in religions, etc., and in spirituality, etc., and the pragmatic uses of the plant. Everything from medicinal to fabric to fuel, you name it. Okay, but this guy, he's back in 1927, all right? So let's continue. Anyone who doubts that this is the end game missed Sunday's meeting. The end game could be to end the drug war against cannabis. Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be terrible? Oh, but good thing Sessions has gone ahead and reinstigated the DARE program, or wants to reinstigate the DARE program, reinitiate I should say, and he wants to make sure that all the cops can steal as much money from people as they possibly can by making sure that civil asset forfeiture is still allowed. Yay! And making sure that legislation exists to be able to circumvent state laws that try to make asset forfeiture more difficult. Yay! That would be great, right? But that's not what this guy wants. This guy wants to continue to put people in jail so he can support the hegemony of the pharmaceutical industrial complex. Got it? Continue. The early results in the states that have already taken the bait. Oh, it's bait! Love the rhetoric. Don't you just love it? I love it. The bait. Should give the rest of us pause. Promises of free tax money, eliminating black markets, and no impact on public safety or teen use are falling short. Tax revenues must be balanced against the social costs, and in the years since legalization, check this jump. I love this one. If you guys can figure out how he made this jump, please let me know. This is a classic logical fallacy. Check it out. And in the years since legalization, Washington and Colorado lead the nation in increased homelessness. How do we know this? First of all, where's the citation? Where's the reference? There's nothing here. How do I know that's true? And also, I'd have to ask, what's the connection between legalized cannabis and homelessness? Does that mean people are spending all their money on buying pot and don't have enough money to pay their rent, so they get kicked out of their house and now they're homeless and live in a shopping cart? Is that what he means? Is that really happening? And if so, is there a direct correlation between the two, legalized marijuana and an increase in homelessness? He would have to prove that before he could state that, but he's not going to do that. There is no connection. It's nonsense. Let's continue. The black market for untaxed pot continues. Of course it does. If I had the choice between, if I lived in Colorado, growing my own cannabis or going to the store and purchasing it, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to grow it. And if a friend of mine wanted to buy some from me, well, that's now black market activity, right? But you're going to do it because that's just how it is, okay? Rather than going to a store that's approved. They legalized it in Colorado so you can also grow it yourself. If you can grow it yourself, well, that also means you could sell it to your buddy. Ooh, but your buddy doesn't have to deal with people in Mexican drug cartels smuggling it all the way up through the United States, causing the chaos that's being caused right now. Unless we want to be like Mexico, where 12,000 people died this last month in June, okay? 12,000, was it? I think it was actually not 12,000 people, 2,000 people. 12,000 people have died in the drug war in Mexico so far this year. I think June was the highest month of all so far. I think it was over 2,000 people. That's what's going on in Mexico. And again, that's due to us giving $45 million to Calderon back in 2006 to militarize the drug war. Yay. So let's continue. But we won't talk about those social consequences because they don't really affect us directly. In our country, we steal money from people who get caught with a joint, and we can stick them in jail. We can put them on probation, make them go to NA, make money in all sorts of different ways. So we don't bother having a direct, outright militarized drug war per se. Instead, we do it in these other subtle ways in this country because this country is all about making the big profit. Just like these pharmaceutical people that probably, I wouldn't be surprised, said, hey, Matt, we need you to write a really shitty letter about marijuana, okay? We don't want that taken off in Texas, okay? Let's continue. According to the Colorado Retail Marijuana Public Health Advisory Committee, 13% of young adults now are classified as daily users, which could help explain the 100% increase in marijuana-related traffic accidents. I'm not even going to comment on that one. The impact of legalization and in parentheses, and the misinformation campaign that precedes it on youths is the most concerning question, as the risk of marijuana addiction, progression to other drugs, and the effects of mental health, cognition, and motivation are most profound in this vulnerable population. Misinformation, is it? So are you going to tell me that Richard Evans Schultz and Albert Hoffman are spreading misinformation? Are you going to tell me that Kenneth Blum, PhD, is spreading misinformation? Are you going to tell me all the writers in Under the Influence are spreading misinformation? Are you going to tell me that Jack Herr was spreading misinformation? Are you going to tell me that all these books about cannabis that show and state the exact opposite of most of the things that you mention are all wrong? It's all misinformation? You're going to tell me that this book by an ethnobotanist on every single goddamn psychoactive plant that there is misinformation? Okay, let's continue. And the whole thing about kids, I don't want to go into it. Anytime you ever hear anybody say this, you guys should already know this. Anyone hear, it's for the children? Watch out. Anybody who says that to you is going to take away something from you. They always start with the children first. That's just how they work. Because people go, oh, the children. And then all logical thought just flies out the window. Anyways. Shockingly, oh my God, I'm shocked. The University of Michigan's annual Monitoring the Future survey shows that 69% of high school seniors no longer view even regular marijuana smoking as harmful. Good. That means we'll put an end to people like this guy. Okay? Good. And that's what I've taught my own kids. Pot's nothing. It's fine. It's better for you than any substance probably that you go buy in the grocery store that's a drug. Okay? College students' daily use rates are the highest in 34 years, while use of other illicit drugs has fallen. Oh, well, that's terrible. I'd rather them doing more cocaine, more crystal meth, and more opiates than smoking cannabis. You know, I'd rather have them do the hard drugs. You know, where are the hard drugs at? Teen marijuana use surveys show mixed results in states with recent medicinal, and he gets all these stuff in quotation mark, medicinal or recreational marijuana laws. But even if teen marijuana use is flat, that is a red flag, as teen use of alcohol, tobacco, sexual activity, and other risky behaviors have continued a long-term decline. Okay, so all the good stuff. Drinking, smoking, and sex, they're on the decline. That's a good thing. You know why they're on the decline, dude? Because everybody's got freaking Facebook. Everybody's on social goddamn media every day instead of doing fun things like having sex and smoking pot or out drinking or smoking a cigarette or whatever. The kids are all clean now. Except for the ones that all think that smoking marijuana, of course, according to this guy, is an okay thing. So this guy's, I don't know, he's crazy. Anyway, let's just continue. It is noteworthy that the top 10 states in teen marijuana use are all states that have legalized at least medicinal, I can't stand that, pot, while the 10 with the lowest use all prohibited. Oh, okay, well that's good. That makes perfect sense. So it's legal here, so it's used more. It's illegal here, so it's not used more. Wow! What a deduction this is, right? Very incredible. No doubt the organizers of the meeting are well-intentioned, and many of the attendees were seeking treatment options for legitimate medical conditions. Oh, well, thank God. I'm glad they were all legitimate medical conditions. In fact, several attendees acknowledged using marijuana currently, yet none had experienced any legal consequences for said use, nor are they likely to, as the tales of mass incarcerations of small-time marijuana users is a myth promulgated to mislead the public and build support for decriminalization. That is not true at all. More people are arrested for cannabis than any other illegal drug in the country, and more people are in jail, and you can check the statistics there, doctor, for the possession of marijuana than any other illegal drug. Urine tests are another great example of how biased the system is against cannabis. Since cannabis stays in your 30 days, all drug tests should really be called THC tests. Because I could do coke, 3 days later, my system is clean. I can do crystal meth, 3 days later, my system is clean. Okay? I can take LSD, it doesn't show up. I can take mushrooms, it doesn't show up. But marijuana, the most benign plant that, that's around, that there is, whatever, does show up in your system for up to 30 days. So that tells me it's a THC test. Anyways, that's just a side note. Let's continue. Okay, so we did that. The state of Texas has proceeded with appropriate caution. Low THC, whatever that means. Low THC, the most addictive psychoactive ingredient. THC is not addictive. Your brain already contains receptors that are ready to receive THC, unlike tobacco. Tobacco, when you smoke cigarettes and develop a nicotine addiction, you create new neurons in your brain to send those nicotine molecules, or whatever you want to call them, in the snap. This guy, it's like arguing with an idiot. But anyways, cannabinoid oil has just been legalized for treatment of intractable seizures when 2 medical specialists agree that it is indicated. There may well be other conditions in which a scientific consensus develops regarding the risk-benefit ratio of marijuana-derived compounds, and these should be considered on a case-by-case basis. Case by case, huh? So we're going to go individually through every single case where people believe that they need medicinal marijuana. Okay? Let's see how long that takes. But asking 30 million Texans to conduct a mass uncontrolled experiment fraught, here it comes, moral hazards on themselves and the public with a potentially, here we go again, this guy sounds like Sessions, potentially dangerous and addictive drug is not the solution. Man, if I go to the grocery store right now, you know how many addictive drugs are for sale in the grocery store? Everything from tobacco to alcohol to Coca-Cola to sugar, you name it, chocolate cake, you name it. All of it's addictive. All of it's available. Not a problem. He doesn't care about problems that are related to diet, for example, because guess what? There's profit to be made by having people get sick from the diets that they have. So he's not going to complain about that. But this plant? Yeah, he's going to complain about this plant. Medicinal marijuana laws, again, he uses that stupid fucking quotation marks again. Those stupid quotation marks are on every single time that the phrase medicinal marijuana is included in his text. Every time. You can tell exactly what he thinks about this. The hegemony is being destroyed. You're taking money away from people who need it. The pharmaceutical companies really need more money, right? Medicinal marijuana laws have impacts that extend beyond the medical aspects, and nothing prohibits authors, judges, pastors, or anyone else from advocating for them. So now he's trying to tilt the balance a little bit. After all the negative rhetoric that this guy uses, his last, 2 paragraphs here tries to kind of balance things out. Watch this final one. But anyone so inclined would be wise to heed the advice of one very old school physician. First, do no harm. If he means, usually when we use the term old school, we mean like a good thing. In this guy's case, old school is a negative thing. Okay, it's a closed-minded little box. Okay, it's a closed-minded little box. All right. So, anyways, I just wanted to kind of just tear this article a new one because it just offended me so much. And you know, I get so offended. My feelings are so hurt. My feelings are not hurt by any means. What stuff like this does, though, is makes me upset in the sense that why does this guy get a voice in our local paper? Why should he get a voice in our local paper when he is doing nothing but the same thing he's talking against? Misinforming people. I wouldn't want to be a patient of his because I already know that you're not going to get anything out of him except more pharmaceuticals and the same old standard type medical procedures that kill people every day. And I said I would show my little poster off, so I'll do that right now. And let me see here. There you go. And this is the time that this guy's living in. He's living in the time when films like Reefer Madness were popular and crap like this, even in Mexico, was out. All right. No, I can't get a good shot of it right now. There we go. There you go, guys. All right. That's all I have to say about this. And this would be a great, great video to look at if you're trying to understand, for example, bias in media. Okay, and again, that's not just for things like cannabis, but politics and everything else that we see around us right now. There's tons of that stuff. Anyways, y'all have a good one. Keep thinking free. Go read some books. And I will see you guys on the flip side. Alvarado out.